Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I've been told that I have to hold this thing really close, so at some point in time I pull away. I'll be looking for this time. I'm Tracy Brown, Tippecanoe County Commissioner. Thank you all for coming out this evening. A great turnout, an important project, and we're going to try to cover as much material as we can this evening. And I promise that I won't leave until I've at least logged your question if I don't have an answer for it, how long it takes. It's important work, and I want to be sure that you guys leave here with the information and a feeling about what is going on. I want to acknowledge some other folks that are in the audience tonight. I think I saw them in the room earlier. County Commissioners Tom Murtaugh and Dave Byers are with us. Thank you, gentlemen. And also County Councilman Jody Hamilton, I think I saw her walk in. Members of our Citizens Steering Committee, Bill and Kay Miller, Ron Tall, John DeLong, and then someone who joined us kind of late, made a field trip up to Kelowna, Indiana, Silas Jura. We've been keeping him looped into the project. Jeff Cook, Pete Pattengale, Brian Lawrence, Dale Nicholson, and Kim Mueller, who tragically passed away. If we could just have a moment of silence before we else. Thank you. Well, quickly, the purpose of the meeting this evening is to inform you again, as you probably heard in the radio ads and saw in the letters that came out, the Board of Commissioners have petitioned the Indiana Department of Environmental Management to establish a regional sewer district in the unincorporated towns of Buck Creek and Colburn. Now, how many of you were at the meeting back on May 11th, 2021? I think that's right. May 11th. That was 2020. I'm sorry. At that point in time, you may recall that the regional sewer district was massive by comparison. It was basically, and really, the way it happened, the story is really easy. 3 communities, they can just draw lines connecting them, but what we learned that night is it included a lot of people that had absolutely no need for the service whatsoever. So we had, in our second run at this, we have just concentrated initially on the 3 communities, Buck Creek, Americus, and Colburn. And then once the health department looked at what was going on in Americus, and Dr. Lewis at that point in time deemed that the work there wasn't critical now, we realized that because of cost, there was no way that we could provide the service, but they're not off of the radar. We're going to continue to monitor that, but right now our focus is on Buck Creek and Colburn specifically. So now you'll hear the project referred to as the Buck Creek Colburn Wastewater Project. Per Indiana law, prior to this meeting, we had to publish the meeting in the Lafayette Journal and Courier 3 times over a 3-week period of time. That was done back in late July, early August. We also had to play a public service announcement on local radio stations 3 times a day for 14 days. And that I'm hoping to hit one. For those of us who still listen to the radio, I'm hoping to hit one of those stations. And then, of course, we had to send letters to the freeholders. Those are the property owners in those communities as the RSD is currently configured. So we've met all of those requirements. And again, this is much smaller. And I think you're going to look. It is, nobody likes it if you're having to pay for something that you don't have to pay for today. But I will tell you, we made some commitments when we met in the gymnasium over here, probably about 3 years ago in October. And those commitments were, I still hear it, and I've had John Long and members of the committee whispering it in my ear nonstop for the last 3 years. It has to be appropriate and cost effective. And I think you're going to see from what we show you tonight that we have taken every measure possible to make sure that we have met those 2 goals. And that doesn't mean this project is a done deal. It is not. It is far from over. It is started, is all. We've got a lot of work to do. We're going to need your help. Your towns, your homes are not unique. Across Indiana, or across the country for that matter, homes that were built in a time when quite frankly, some of the homes that were built in your town were built pre-modern plumbing. We all know that, because I can still see the sidewalks leading to the pretties of the outhouses on the property when I was out looking for septic tanks. People have kept those things. That infrastructure is still in place. But there are a lot of small towns where homes are built on small lots, and the septic system is eventually going to give out. And that's what brings us to where we are today. Some have over the years, they've been connected to drain tiles and things like that, and we know we've got to do a better job, and that's what brought us to this position. We have the steering committee was formed in 2023, and again, I covered that Americus is no longer part of the process, but we've still got an eye on them. A preliminary engineering report has been put together. You'll hear from the engineers in just a bit. And they were able to, in the last year, point us to a system that we believe best serves the needs of the two communities. It is a novel system. It is not new technology. It is actually old technology that works, and you don't have to drive any further than Kewanna, Indiana to see it in action. And that's what we have landed on in terms of the technology that is to be used. And the system is going to have a treatment system, a treatment location, and a collection system from both towns. And it'll, as the engineers will explain, it'll involve both a force main and a gravity sewer. And I'll let them explain what it is, because I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around it. The big thing that you're wondering about is, how's the project going to be funded? Who's going to pay for it? Well, back a few years ago, right after COVID, the ARPA legislation gave almost, I think in total it was close to $36 million to Tippecanoe County. Make no mistake about it, it's your money. It's not our money, and it wasn't the federal government's money, it was yours. It was collected and given back to the community for infrastructure projects, specifically wastewater, water, and broadband. And you folks are getting broadband in your communities right now, and that funding is a big part of that. I see Kay Milner clapping back there. She called me today that hers was hooked up, and you know, we were fortunate to get some hotspots put up here, and you're going to have broadband very soon. I know not soon enough, but that's what the ARPA money went for, and we earmarked initially. It was, I think, about $7.5 million, and we're up to $10.5 million right now, which means it doesn't complete the whole project. It gets very close. We're still going to have to look for some grant funding, but what it means is that as homeowners in the two communities, you don't have to bear the expense of building a huge plant or facility to treat or for transportation. Your subscriber fees go for the ongoing maintenance, which I think could give you some of the lowest rates in the area by comparison. What are those rates going to be? We don't, you know, it depends on a lot of things. How much further we can squeeze the annual cost for maintaining the system and replacing equipment, stuff like that. We're thinking, you know, if it's somewhere $50 plus or minus 10%, it would be a really, really good day for us, because that is substantially lower than what folks are paying in the cities. And if you go to Romney, Indiana, the last time I looked down there, it was $85 a month there. And you know, when we were here before, we didn't have a fixed price, but I think we had a range, and it was 85 to 125. So thank you, John. John remembered that. I knew it was high. I didn't remember that it was that high. So that's where we are right now. So we have $10.5 million. The one catch is we have to obligate this money by the first of the year, which means we have to have contracts in place to make that happen. And then we have until December 31st of 2026 to build the thing. That's going to take a lot of work, but it's going to take a lot of will, and we really need. I mean, for this to happen, citizens have to get behind it. I would be in no position to force you into something that you don't want. We didn't do that before. And quite frankly, you know, we won't let the money go to waste. We'll find a way to use, there's somebody out there that will need it. But I think given the fact that we are in the position that we're in right now and the capital costs are taken care of, I would just ask that everyone, because we need to have as many people participate in this as we can, because every person that doesn't, then it makes it more expensive for everyone else to be able to participate. So that's kind of where we find ourselves right now. So I've said everything that I need to say right now. I'm gonna turn it over to the folks who are the pros. And they didn't have those when I was a kid. Radio controlled cars, very good. I do want to thank our tech team. Do give them a round of applause because they've been here since 3:30 today. Eric and David. I forgot to mention earlier, this is actually being streamed live and it's being recorded. So if you've got friends or family that aren't able to see it, they can go to our website. And I suppose you folks could have watched it from home, but I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're here right now. So with that, Carl, are you going to be first?
Yeah, I'll be first.
John, do you have anything you want to add?
Mine are a little hiccups. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Carl Tanner, and I'm one of the project managers for the design of the treatment plant. Steve will be talking later about the collection system. Tracy had mentioned that we did some preliminary engineering, so I'm just going to briefly go through what we did to come to the conclusion of our selected alternative. If you want to forward. Okay, so we looked at three alternatives. One was cluster absorption fields, which are like absorption fields like you'd have in your, oh, closer, okay. Boy, that makes a little bit of difference. So the cluster absorption fields are large absorption fields like you would have at your house. But what they are is they're very large, and you'd have, say, 30, 40 homes attached to a field that is several acres in size. Some of the disadvantage of that is once you build the fields, they're not expandable. They once they fail, they're hard to repair, similar to what you'd have at a residential field. So we eliminated that alternative from consideration. The next alternative we looked at was a packaged treatment plant, which is like a mechanical plant that is almost pre-designed, where you've got blowers and pumps, concrete, and those plants require a lot more operation. There's a lot of testing required, a lot of maintenance on the mechanical equipment. So for that reason, they've got high O&M costs, and we decided that that was not the best alternative. And then the last alternative we looked at was the lagoon, which is basically it's a big pond, and you can have aerated or unaerated. We've decided on aerated because it's determined to have a better level of treatment. The lagoons have very low operation and maintenance. They have we've got a pump station and some aerators. So we've got low horsepower there, little amount of mechanical equipment. And then as far as valves and daily operation, there's really nothing to do. You kind of set it and forget it. And you set weir gates and they just run on their own. And I'll talk a little bit more about the characteristics here. The other thing to note with the alternative that we selected is the discharge is going to be spray irrigation to cropland, and that was chosen for the beneficial reuse. Keep the water in the community, in the area, instead of putting it in a stream to flow away. Okay. Just to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of the lagoon system. As I mentioned, low operation costs. The other thing is that they've got very long lifespans. It's since it's a pond, there's no concrete to crack. There's little equipment to break down, valves to replace. So we've seen lagoons in the state that have been operating for 40, 50 years without having to have much work done to them. As I mentioned, it's simple operation. They can take varied flow rates with extra capacity. And as I mentioned, we're utilizing irrigation for the discharge. Disadvantages is it does require a larger land area, particularly for the storage portion. 90 days is required to store the water that's treated during the winter months when irrigation is not possible, and when the ground is frozen, or if it's saturated too, there's no irrigation allowed. Next one. That's just some pictures to show the three of the examples of lagoons. So they're very simple. They're really just ponds. Okay, you can forward. So just to give an idea of the physical characteristics of these, the design flow is going to be 27,000 gallons per day, which is a pretty low flow rate. That equates to about 150 gallons per resident and residential home. And so that's the design flow rate. The detention time for treatment is 60 days. And that goes through 2 treatment lagoons. So each treatment lagoon has 30 days of detention. So that's how you get your treatment. It's just with the long detention, you get breakdown of the organics, and it just naturally treats the water without having to introduce a lot of mechanical and other. What would you say, Steve? Without mechanical equipment. Thank you. As I mentioned, for storage, which is for the irrigation, is for 90 days. These lagoons are relatively small. The 2 treatment lagoons are about 1/2 an acre each, and the storage lagoon is about 1 acre each. The depth is 10 feet, and then they've got the berm will come up 3 feet above the water level. The berms, the lagoons will be somewhat depressed into the existing ground, so the range of height of the berm from the existing grade will range from 3 feet to 7 feet. So they're not going to be that high. It's not like you're going to have a huge mound of dirt, and they've got a pretty shallow slope of 3 to 1. They'll be covered with grass that will be mowed, and then on the inside they'll have to have riprap to stabilize the slopes from the water wave action on the sides. That's all I have on the treatment plant, and so I'll pass it over to Steve.
Thank you. I'm going to stand so I'm not twisting around in my chair all the time. My name is Steve Henshin. I'm an engineer with Jones Petrie Rafinsky Corp. We work for Carl with Tanner Consulting on this project, and we're responsible for the collection system. So let's go to the next slide, please. So similar to the treatment options where we looked at various systems, we did the same thing for collection. And the collection system is basically the piping network that transports the poop from your house to this treatment plant for ultimate treatment. There's several different ways we can go around about that. One is a pressure sewer system. One is what's called a septic tank effluent pump system, and a gravity system. The pressure sewer system consists of small diameter pipes, anywhere from 2-inch to 4-inch, that are running in the streets in front of your houses. And it would require a grinder station at each house to take the flow coming out of the house into this grinder pump and grind it up and pump a slurry through this pipeline, ultimately either to a pump station downstream. It's a lower capital cost or construction cost to install that type of system. But because every single house has to have a pump, it's a lot of mechanical equipment, right? We're gonna have a grinder station and a pump with a life of maybe 10 years or so. And when we, weigh those operating costs against the capital costs, it's usually not the most cost effective for densely populated communities like we have here at Buck Creek and Colburn. Septic tank effluent is a little different system. It's where each house would have a septic tank, and most likely it would have to be a new one unless there was any documentation that the house is being served had an adequate, properly sized septic tank. But with a septic tank effluent system, the waste from your house goes through the septic tank. The solids remain just like they do now if you have a operating septic system. And then what's called the gray water or the effluent then gets pumped out into these small diameter pipelines, ultimately to the treatment plant. So at the treatment plant, you're treating what's called gray water instead of the full wastewater that has all the solids and other organic matters in it. Again, it's kind of a medium cost, little more costly than the pressure sewer system, but a little less costly than the gravity sewer system. But it has higher operating costs because, number one, we got pumps at each septic tank that has to pump this flow out. Then we still got to plan for the fact that septic tanks have to be pumped routinely, and that's usually on a 3 to 4 year cycle to keep a healthy well operating septic system. You add those costs up, again, it's a little higher cost than what was determined to be the lowest cost overall when we take into account capital costs and operating costs is the gravity sewer system. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide, please. Lowest operating, it's the absolute lowest in operating costs. And what I mean by that is the flow is coming out of your house, flowing down a gravity pipe into the mainline sewer out in the road. And for each community, all that flow is being transported to a single pump station. The larger pump station, it'll have, anywhere from 7.5 to maybe 15 horsepower motors in it, just 2 of them, but it's only one station. And so there's no energy costs other than running those pumps at that pump station. All the flow is coming down by gravity, basically, into that system. There's a couple of low-lying areas that those places might have a special ejector pump, and we're still evaluating those right now. It's a balance between how deep do we put the gravity sewer in to serve every single house versus raising it up 3 or 4 feet to serve 95% of the houses and require a few of the houses to have ejector pumps. That's kind of a cost scenario that we're going through right now. The biggest cost driver in the gravity sewer is how deep it's going to be in the ground. Just imagine, if you're digging a trench, if you're only going 5 to 8 feet, which is the desired depth, versus if you have to go over 20 foot deep, it's a lot bigger machine. It's going to create more wider asphalt repair required to put that in, those type of things. So the real balance with the gravity sewer system is to find the routes and the alignments that keep our sewer as shallow as possible. And I think we've been through multiple iterations and review with the county and the steering committee, and I think we've kind of come with a good balance. In Buck Creek, we have one section on Church Street, if you know where Church and darn a blank. No, the next street by the church. Not Church, I'm sorry. Getting my streets confused. The big church in town, right? Yes. Ferret, Madison and Ferret. Okay. That's like one of the high points in town. But our pump station's going to be on the north side of Madison, back in that big wooded area that the Wayne Township owns. But we can get all of our gravity through there relatively shallow, except for that big hill right there around Ferret. And we have about a 400 to 500 foot section where our sewer line is going to be about 20 foot deep. All right. Rest of the sewers throughout the whole community are usually anywhere from 3 to 8 feet below grade. few sections where it's 10 or 12, but we think it's pretty economical. The gravity sewer system has a long lifespan. The manholes and the pipe, conservatively, we're saying has a 75-year life. We're not going to have to replace it, definitely not in my lifetime. It's a very simple operation because it's all flown by gravity. And of course, we have the elimination. We don't have septic tanks or grinder pumps out there to operate. Disadvantages, the deeper excavations and surface disruptions during construction. I'm not going to lie, it'll be kind of messy during construction. But when it's all done, streets are going to be repaved, driveways restored, any disturbance to the side yards as far as, right along the edge of the road, if there's grasses, that type of thing, those will all be restored and replaced with the project. Next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of point out the different aspects. So, you see houses sitting here, and it's not really a straight vertical drop pipe, but the house where your line comes out of your house now for your septic system would be intercepted, connected to the main, which is typically out in the roadway, is where the gravity sewer is located. And that's all flowing downhill through different parts. This is just one little simple segment, but it all flows down to what we call this pump station here. So pump station sits below grade. The only thing you'll see out at that pump station site in Buck Creek or Colburn is the lids of the wet wells, which will be about a 6-foot diameter. There'll be a valve vault next to it, and then a control panel, maybe 4x4, mounted on some aluminum posts. And so for the most part, that's all completely below grade. You will also have these manholes throughout the gravity sewer system, primarily at the intersections. So whenever I have two gravity sewer lines coming together and maybe one coming out, that's done in what's called a concrete manhole. And you've all driven over them in, Lafayette and Delphi, anywhere they have a big municipal sewer system, you got those manhole lids in the street. At the grade surface, they're 2-foot diameter. They're installed to be flush with the existing pavement, so they're not a hindrance to snowplows and those type of things in the wintertime. So that's just what I wanted to show you on that. Next slide, please. And just to give you a little inkling of what construction will be like, so there'll be some trenches. Here's where they're setting a manhole in, and that's the gravity sewer pipe that would be flowing through it. You can see in this case, this trench is about, if you look at that guy standing there, it's probably about 6 foot deep below grade. And we try to keep sewers shallow like that wherever possible. You'll see here on the side, there'll be saw cutting asphalt pavement. And before this gets backfilled and repaired, those saw cuts will be made nice and straight so that we have a nice clean joint where we put the new pavement with the old. This is just showing the, another manhole going in here. You can see it's roughly a 4-foot diameter below grade, and then you have this concentric cone that comes up to this 2-foot opening, and that concrete lid, or that cast iron lid, sits on top of that. All of these manholes are rated for H20 highway load, so large semis, dump trucks, etc., can run over those and not cause any damage to those. And then this is just showing a little deeper installation here. This is probably about 10 foot deep, and you can see when they're getting into those deeper cuts, the contractor will be pulling, there's his excavator doing the excavating work, and they pull this steel trench box. That's just to help keep the workers safe as they're installing it. So those are just some general pictures kind of showing how that gravity sewer system would be installed. Next slide, please. Then there's going to be a force main. First of all, in Colburn, the proposed pump stations plan to be at the south end of the community on Church Street. If you know where Church Street comes down south and then turns around the curve there, we're planning to put it just offside the edge of the road, right through that curve area. It'll be protected by a guardrail system that we've already talked with the county highway about. So that will actually be located in land that's maintained by county highway. So from the pump station in Buck Creek, the force main will be a 3-inch diameter pipe. So all the flow is going into the pump station through an 8-inch diameter gravity sewer. But that 8-inch won't be flowing full ever. An 8-inch gravity sewer at minimum slope can actually handle about 400 homes. You know, we have, I believe, about 75 in Buck Creek and about 65 in Colburn. It's just what the state requires as the minimum size for a gravity sewer. And that's so that you have down the road, if you ever do need to clean the line, it's a large enough pipe that you can get a pig down through there and flush it out or drag it out if you need to. But then the pipe from the pump station in Buck Creek to Colburn will be in roughly a 3-inch diameter force main. And it'll be plastic pipe, again, pressure rated plastic pipe. It will have the option of being drilled in like this method is showing here. This is just showing a directional drill. You see them all over the place now. The fiber guys are using it everywhere. Natural gas uses it. And that line will be 4.5 to 5 feet below grade. But it causes basically no disturbance in a 600-foot section because you go about 600-foot segments to put that pipe in the ground. That pipe is going to be laid in the same trench as the gravity sewer as it's coming out of Buck Creek, goes across the railroad tracks, and then it's going to head east along 500, County Road 500. It's going to go due east all the way to County Road 1000. There it'll turn 90 degrees and go north right up into Colburn then. Once we get the south end of Colburn at Church Street, where Church Street comes in with County Road 1000, it's going to take a right and go to that pump station just around the corner there. Then the force main out of Colburn will be one size larger. It's going to be a 4-inch, and that's going to pretty much run through the existing trench as the gravity sewers. A single pipe going up north, up Church Street, going all the way out through the farm field on the north end of Colburn, following the farmers' property lines there, and then going up north to the treatment plant. By the way, I didn't think you'd be able to see it real well on the slides. We do have maps and some more detailed plans over here that kind of show the route of that. So if you're interested to see how this might impact your property, whether you're on the gravity sewer in Buck Creek or Colburn or on that force main route, we can kind of show you where we intend to put those lines. Hasn't been mentioned yet, but the intent for this project, because I've talked to a couple people here who are along that force main route, my understanding at this point, there's no expectation that there'll be any forced connections at all along that. In fact, you know, while there could be perhaps a couple of connections along the way in the future, it's basically a dedicated line to take the waste from Buck Creek to Colburn. Could have some connections to it, but there's not an expectation that anybody along that force main is going to be tying into the system. If you were, you'd have to have a special grinder station to be able to do that. It wouldn't be able to just flow in by gravity because that line is under pressure. That's taking that line, that waste from Colburn to Buck Creek. And this last picture is just showing you kind of an interim stage. Once they get through a block of construction, you saw those excavators and everything in. Next step is they'll be coming in and backfilling this with stone. You can see maybe about half the pavement width was disturbed with this project. And then typically when the project gets close to being done completely, then they're going to come in and do a mass pavement project throughout the town to completely repair that and put asphalt back in where asphalt was. If we had to cross a concrete sidewalk or whatever, that concrete sidewalk would be repaired as well. Next slide, please. So just a few small details here. Buck Creek, approximately 75 single-family connections, 9 small commercials or businesses, a couple churches, post office, green elevator, a couple small businesses in the fire department. I didn't mention in there, but you know, the community center is up there as well. They're going to be part of this project also. And then Colburn has approximately 65. These are plus or minus 1 or 2. We're still finalizing those counts, but that's approximately where we're at. And there's one small church there in Colburn as well. Next slide. Just some general statistics here for you. This proposed gravity sewer system, both in Buck Creek and Colburn, to serve those homes, about 19,600 feet. We have about 25,000 feet of 3-inch force main that's running from Buck Creek to Colburn, so that's about 5 miles. We have 6,500 feet of 4-inch force main that's running from Colburn up to the wastewater treatment plant north of Colburn. And as I mentioned, one of the key drivers that's making this project so economical is that we only are going to require 2 pump stations, one in Buck Creek, pumping a max rate of about 50 gallons per minute, and then Colburn, pump max rate of about 90 gallons per minute. And again, I just mentioned generally where those are located, and we can be glad to show you some more details after the meeting here if you're interested in seeing where things are. Next slide, please. Approximate project schedule, always subject to change, but we're kind of working through this, that we're going to finalize design in October, submitting permits, construction permits in October, receiving bids perhaps in November. This is what I'd call like a best case schedule. Awarding project perhaps in December, beginning construction in March of 2025. And while we think most of it can get completed in one construction season, there might be a few things that have to wait till the following spring. So we're saying right now about May of 2026. So that's kind of the ballpark of where we intend to do these projects. We'll have probably several different contractors, one doing the treatment plant, one doing gravity system in Buck Creek, one doing gravity system in Colburn. It could be the same contractor if they got the low bid for both. And then probably a third or a fourth contractor then that will be building the force main between Buck Creek and Colburn. It's just a general layout of how we're thinking that might happen. Next slide, please. I think that was the last of our slides. Tracy, I will turn it back to you at this point.
Thank you both, Carl and Steve, for making that easier to understand, especially for folks like me who sometimes have a hard time getting my head wrapped around some of the technical stuff. I never dreamed in a million years that I would spend so much time talking about sewage waste. But anyway, here we are. The one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, and there are some, Steve did a great job of outlining the timeline for the project. The question that I didn't answer earlier that is a good question is who, once the system is completed, once it's done and it's operational, who manages the system at that point in time? And that is what brings us together here tonight, is because we're in the process of petitioning the Indiana Department of Environmental Management to create the regional sewer district here that will be citizen-led, led by neighbors in the communities, and there'll be some local government involvement as well. But it's important that it be handled that way, and it works that way across the state and in many small communities, and it best serves neighbors to be involved in the process. With that, I know there are going to be many questions, and my goal tonight is I'm going to be realistic. There'll be some questions that we just won't be able to answer, but what we are committed to doing is logging and logging, preserving, and investigating all of those questions so that we can get you an answer at some point in time. So now I would like to open it up to the floor for questions. And the way that I'd like to do this is if you are able and comfortable and just want to step to the podium and just state your name and your address so that we can capture that information. And if you would rather remain seated, we will have somebody that can also bring a microphone to you. So we'll give you, it's your choice there. But again, and we're going to remain here for a little bit afterwards till if you're more comfortable not coming to the microphone and you just want to come up and talk to us afterwards, that's fine too. Although the benefit of coming to the microphone is there's a good chance that there's somebody else out there that has the exact same question, maybe was just not wanting to come up. So, Paula?
Just raise your hand if you want to speak. My name is Bill Miller, and I represent the Buck Creek Methodist Church in Buck Creek. And the question I have is, from the church to the line, who is going to do that? Is the church responsible for taking it from the church out to the main line, or is that part of the project?
That brings up a good question about how the project interfaces with all the residents. So I'll try to answer that more generally. Every resident is going to be required and expected to connect from their property, from their residence, out to the property line. So this project, as described by Steve and Carl, is bringing a line to the property line, and from that point on to the stub out that comes through your basement that drops all your sewage down, you will be responsible for putting that in. The church will be responsible for its property. The individual residents will be responsible for their properties. The other element of this is that because most of you have septic tanks, those septic tanks will need to be pumped and then filled with gravel, crushed to make them basically non-hazardous. And at that point, a new line will need to be laid, a trench will be dug, and a new line laid from the basement stub out from your sewer to the gravity sewer as described. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just as a FYI, we've been doing some work talking to the aggregate folks up in Delphi about how much pea gravel is required to fill up a 1,000-gallon tank, and how much it costs to pump a tank, and then how much it costs to trench from the properties to the collection system. And the rough estimate, I would say, is about probably $1,000, maybe as much as $1,500, depending on the distance that you're going from the residence where your stub out is to get to the property line. But that's on the basis of information that IMI Aggregate gave us, and what we know the sort of ongoing costs are for excavator and an operator who can lay this kind of pipe.
I'm John Metro, and I represent Buck Creek I've got several houses. And my thing of it is what we're talking about is I've already got a really nice setup myself with a septic tank, finger systems and everything. Am I going to be forced to close that? Or can I keep my own?
That's a great question. The current Indiana code, which was changed in 2022, so since we started all of this, says that if you have a system that was installed new and was permitted and is in operating condition, and that's to be determined by an inspection that the health department can do, or you can pay a third party to confirm, then you can seek an exemption of up to 10 years from being required to participate in the RSD. There's a provision for an additional 2 5-year extensions if your system is still operating in an appropriate fashion. So total, if you have a new system, as you described, that was permitted and is operating, you can be excluded from participating in the RSD for up to 20 years in total.
Okay. And now on the part of the $1,000 for the people that have to put it from the property line into their house, there's a lot of people that are older in Buck Creek and they don't have $1,000. How's that going to happen?
Yeah, another great question. Obviously, the key concern for this project from day one, as you'll remember if you were here 5 years ago when I stood up and sort of dominated the session, was a concern to bring these costs down as far as we can. The $1,000 that I've described is significantly less than what our engineers tell us is going to be required. I'm looking to the community to help out and provide services to help out people in need like that. And as you know, our Washington Township board and trustee have funds available to assist for people in need for this kind of an expense. So I'm hoping between all those different things, community coming together, people helping out, and the township, we can fund this and meet those needs.
But there's no opening in there to where we're gonna be spending millions of dollars to do this. There's no opening in there for 75 and 65, just to extend that a little more so these people don't have to come up with that kind of money. Let the funds that you've got, bring that on in.
I can tell you that I've spent 4.5 years pushing this project to be as inexpensive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The whole reason that we are doing a project in the structure that we are with this lagoon, there hasn't been a lagoon built in Indiana in more than 30 years. The only reason for that is because the capital cost is too high, but the O&M costs, the operations and maintenance costs, which determine what you will pay for a monthly fee, are the absolute lowest of any technology we can find. So we've dedicated the money that we have, which, believe me, has, I need to thank the county council, need to thank the county commissioners, and you need to thank the federal taxpayers who came up with all this money, because very few communities have ever got this kind of support from either the local government or from the federal government to do this kind of project. I wish I could say that there was an unlimited amount of funds and that we could give everybody a free tie-in.
Yeah.
But I think that making that last hookup between the houses and the system is something that, working together, the community has enough folks who are capable with backhoes and excavators, and we'll find a way to do this at scale to help everybody and bring those costs down to the absolute minimum. And then the other funds that I've described from the township or other, perhaps the churches or other charity organizations can help us with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing, John?
I did.
Mark Bishop from Colburn. I was wondering, great numbers on the force main piping, yes, as far as lineal feet. What I was wondering, we have, secondary roads that these people live on. So what comes off the force main that, say, goes down 700, goes down Strong Street to pick up those property owners to tie into the force main, takes it out to the wastewater station?
Let's differentiate, make sure we're differentiating between the gravity collection system, which is not under any pressure, and that goes down to the lift stations, the pump stations. From there, there's a separate line. We may try to install it in the same trench just to save money, but that separate line is the pressurized force main. So the only connections to the force main are the two lift stations.
So there are going to be two on the gravity fed system. There'll be the force main. I live on Church Street, so I'm going to have the force main and then also have the gravity fed station there as well. Now, people living over on 700 Strong Street, they're going to be installing the gravity system that runs back south to Colburn into that lift station, correct?
Yeah. So the gravity collection system is just it's a bunch of fingers that are all sloping downhill, and at the bottom is Church Street.
41 years of construction, I know what it is.
Yeah.
We haven't seen those numbers on that gravity system. We've seen numbers on the force main system, but we haven't seen the numbers on the gravity system. What kind of pipe? You said 8-inch pipe, 4-inch pipe, and that's all going to run down into the lift stations and eventually run it right back into the force main up to the water treatment station.
Yeah, exactly. You got it exactly right. Steve is our expert on the collection system, so let me ask him to address your question and give the details.
And maybe I misunderstood, but every home that's being served is being served by a every home that's being served in Buck Creek or Colburn is being served by the gravity sewer. So the house will connect to the gravity sewer. That whole gravity network flows through a series of pipes down to the one pump station in Buck Creek or the one pump station in Colburn. The only force main, I think as John stated, is between those two pump stations, but there aren't any connections tied to those force mains. There's a force main running from Buck Creek pump station to Colburn pump station. Dumps into that. Then it gets picked up and pumped from Colburn pump station up north to the wastewater treatment plant. So every house is going to be served by a gravity sewer, either in their, I'll call it front yard side, which would be in the street, or there's a few locations where in the backyard side, perhaps in an existing alley. That help answer the question? Okay.
I'm Hank Brown. I want to know, when they come down through past our house, can we tell them where we want that hookup to be?
Within reason.
Pardon?
Within reason.
Well, I don't want it to be on the other side of my house. I need it on this side of the house.
Much of the force main, I'm sorry, much of the collection system has been oriented.
Will they put T's in all this so we can, or a sweeping 45 in that?
Exactly. Yeah, you'll have a TY connection so that you can bring it in, and along where the gravity system is running in front of your property or behind your property, you can designate, where you want that to be. If you want to, it'll generally be as straight a line from your stub out at the basement as possible in order to minimize your trenching and all.
Yeah, that's
and to avoid trees. And let me, that's another good point actually, is that, some people have trees or they have other concerns there. I mean, the installation is going to be sensitive to that and try to avoid any damage or disruption to those natural features.
So when they come through, all we got to do is tell them whereabouts I need it.
I think we'll probably, when they start up, we'll have a liaison who's an owner's agent who will be working with the engineers and with the contractor. And at that time, we'll have a stake or some special medallion that can be posted at the site that the homeowner has the preference.
Yeah.
And if the engineering and all can work, that will be where it goes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Hank, can you hang around a little bit? Because I got a question for you about Miller Street before you leave tonight.
My name's Roger Marshall, and I'm in Colburn. I'm right there on that corner where they want to put that pump station. I'm wondering, so is the pipes going to go along the side of the street or underneath the street for that pump station?
Yeah, a great question again. It depends. Because we are working around existing utilities, we're not going to be asking the gas company to move their gas main in Buck Creek, for instance, or the buried phone lines to move. So we are working around those as best we can. Our goal is to be off the edge of the pavement, but as John mentioned, if some of these streets have some really big old trees,
Right.
in the way, and our idea is to not take those trees out, okay? So what I would encourage you to do is, I do have a set of preliminary plans up here, and I'd be glad to show you how we're thinking the sewer would be routed in front of your property. We can, take a look at that and talk about those concerns. But we're generally not trying to take out trees, and what that means, though, is in both communities, a significant chunk of the new sewer line is going to be under pavement,
Right.
under a driving lane, for instance.
Well, I know my neighbor across the street there, they live right on that corner also. And I was just wondering if it was going to take up like their whole driveway and front yard area for that pipe to go through there.
Well, when the construction of the wet well of the lift station should not block any driveways. As we're building the sewer down the street, though, as we cross each driveway, there will be an interim period where that driveway is not accessible.
Right.
And that could be a 3 to 4 hour period. Again, I think the county with their construction representative, part of that job is going to be to coordinate with each residence to let you know when we're going to be about in front of your house. And then, you know, they'll get through those sections as quickly as possible, get it backfilled. You won't be left overnight or for 2 days without access to your driveway.
Oh, okay.
It will be a several hour period backfilled, so you can still temporarily, if it was dry asphalt, it may not be asphalt for a while. It'll be stone that'll be maintained until it's time to asphalt.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Mention how deep that lift station is going to be, and then how deep the sewer will be when it connects.
Okay. At Church Street specifically, the sewer line coming in is relatively shallow, about 6 to 8 foot deep.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a really deep trench coming down Church Street on that tail end.
Oh, okay.
And the pump station site itself, though, that will be about 15 to 16 foot deep probably. So that'll be a bigger hole, but that'll be away from driveways and things.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on like a little slope there. So.
Yes, right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
My name's Kevin White, I live in Buck Creek. I have a couple questions. First of all, I believe you said like 5% of the affected homes are gonna be lower than the gravity line. And then you just, after that, said that it's up to each household to connect. So the pump that needs to go in those homes, is that on the owner too? And who knows who they are and who they aren't? How are we gonna find out? And is there gonna be a check valve or something so that nothing comes back to your house when the pump's not running?
Yeah, excellent question. It'll be on the RSD. So the district will pay for for the electricity and the pump for those few homes that have to have those. The reason for putting those in place is in order to reduce the overall costs of the collection system. Because as Steve described earlier, if we can pick up one low point, then the whole system can be installed at a much lower elevation difference, a much lower depth. And so that's the benefit. So I think the right answer, I think, is to have the RSD pick that up, because it benefits everybody to have the system kept high. But those few people, there are, I think, 4 or 5 homes on the east side of Colburn, across the railroad tracks, that are very deep down in the gully there. There's one up in northeast Colburn who's also very low down. If we tried to pick those up, it would require us to bury the whole collection system very low.
That,
okay.
I mean, will the involved parties be notified that they are that party?
Yes, they will, and the pumps will be managed, and those will be maintained also by the RSD. So that's a good question, and we'll try to involve them and take care of.
Other question is, if I get on the system, when I get ready to tie into it, of course, it's got to be inspected 12 times and okayed and everything else. All this time I'm gonna be out of use for my system while I'm waiting to get it inspected after I hook it up?
No, once you're hooked up, the system should be operational.
That's what I'm talking about. When I go out and hook it up, then how long am I gonna have to wait and be out of use of the system for somebody to come and inspect it so I can start using it?
No, I think at the minute you hook it up, there'll be somebody who inspects it and you'll be live. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. The project, obviously we've got to hook up all of the piping will be put in the ground, and all the force main and the treatment cells up in the lagoon. But once all that's put in, then the flag will drop. Everybody can start hooking up to it. Once you're hooked up, it'll flow down to the lift station. You're live. You're going. The permits will be issued same day you tie in. You'll be inspected and tied in. Well, I don't think so. But the coordination of this, it's not so many homes. I mean, we've got maybe I think the round number is 150 homes that'll be connected. And so obviously that many can't be done in one day. And an owner's representative for the RSD will be out there, inspecting and making sure that that's coordinated.
Okay, so he was talking about the sewer heads that'll be in like the city, for lack of a better term, like you see in the city. What, is there gonna be risers somewhere to let the air out so the gravity part works?
Yeah, we don't need, in the gravity sewer, we don't need risers. We will at the pump station, there will be very small vents that we have to make sure is vented. And in the force main run, the pressurized portion of the pipes at various high points, roughly every 2,500 feet, there will also be what we call air release valves in the system where small bubbles of air that get trapped will be able to get released into the structures, but those are all released into the structures below grade.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, Lori Walters from Buck Creek. So I have two questions. One, you were talking about if you wanted an exemption to be able to tie in if you had an existing septic system. You said if it was new, like how new is new?
The Indiana code that addresses this is 1326-5-2.5. The only reason I mention that is because you can go read it. It's a little bit convoluted, but what it says is that the system needs to have been installed as new.
Okay.
And that it was permitted.
Got it.
And if those two conditions exist, it doesn't matter how old it is, and that's what changed in 2022. So now, regardless of how old it is, if it's operating and gets inspected, then you will be granted a 10-year exemption with 2 subsequent 5-year exemptions possible pending inspections.
So does that apply to the septic system or to the personal homeowner? So like if we would go to sell that house within those 10 years, would the new home buyer have that exemption too, or does it have?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes,
right.
That's fine.
And then if we have a sump pump that drains to the current drain line right now, and then we also have our septic system, would we have to have move that septic to our sump pump to our septic, so we only have one tie-in?
Yeah, some pumps are a problem, and here's the problem, because if somebody's sump pump is running all the time, it's throwing a lot of additional volume into the system. So the system is designed for specific volumes based on using your dishwasher, your toilets, your shower, your sink, all that. So we're not anticipating that sump pumps would be tied into it. So we can talk more about particular issues if there are houses that absolutely have to have sump pumps, but I would suggest that, let's talk more about that on a case-by-case basis, because if you've got a problem with a sump pump, it might be better to put a French drain in or some other.
Oh, we have a French drain, and it all goes out because we have the really high water table. So we can talk separately. Okay.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up.
Hi, I'm Rob Weston. I got a question for the commissioners. Are we gonna have to have a permit to tie in? And how much is that gonna cost to the individual residents? Or are you gonna make it exempt?
That's a good question. I do know when they built, and I can look to Romney because I know I like the model that they had there. It was pretty simple. They allowed homeowners there, I'm told, to, if they wanted to dig it themselves, they could. It just had to meet certain criteria, and they had one inspector that was responsible for inspecting to make sure that those criteria were met before they covered it up. But I'll find out.
So you don't know if there's gonna be additional cost?
I don't know what they did down there.
Okay.
We want to make it, obviously, we want to make it as easy for folks as we can.
I know, okay.
right now. Mr. Weston? Excuse me, just a question, whether you know what the current permit costs are for tying in. Do you have experience with that?
Yes, but I do get a lot of permits for electric. So I know that, our electrical permits are $75. But a construction, like for a new house, could be several hundred, or 800 or something, pole barns, they're all over the place with different costs. So I didn't know the $1,000 you're talking about, is it gonna be 1,000 and that includes the Tippecanoe permit? Or is there gonna be another $250 permit to each individual house to the county? I just wondered, we're trying to get our total cost, and the government has their total cost, but is the county also going to get their piece of the pie in the permitting?
Okay, good question, and we'll ask for clarification and get back to you. Thank you.
Go along, and I usually don't want to stand up there again. Sorry, bud. It's true. Just on basically what we was talking about, and you guys have been talking about going, I'm not a plumber, okay? And to hook up myself in the house and bring it out. Now, one of my houses is right on the road, and the septic and stuff is in the back, but then the back is an alley. So in the front, they would have to run from the back of the house all the way through the house out to the front where the main road is. And is there stipulations of how you have to lay that pipe under in your basement? I don't know.
Yeah, the stub out that pierces your foundation right now would be the place that you'd tie in. If you want to install if you want to stub out in the front, in your example, you could do that and then tie in, that much less, but it would require some repiping inside your house. Am I clear about, you said the stub out to your septic tank is in the back of your house currently, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't want to come around your house out to the front yard?
There's no room on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, there's a 2-car garage and another person's property. So you'd have to go under the garage.
Yeah.
You'd have to run it straight through the basement out to the front on that house.
Yeah, that might be what's required, is plumbing inside the house that brings a stub out through the foundation at the front of the house and then to tie into the
And if it's
to the
going to be
property
6
line.
foot down, then I've actually got to go even deeper, dig a hole in the basement. Right?
I don't, I'm hearing from Steve that he stubs them out at 5 foot depth. So he's gonna bring his lateral in to your property line at a point where a 5 foot stub out from your basement will have enough grade to tie into the gravity collection system.
So even if our sewer is 8 foot deep in front of even if our sewer is 8 foot, 10 foot deep in front of your house where you plan to connect, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be stubbing out laterals from that main line to the right-of-way line off the edge of the street, where the actual right-of-way line is. And those will typically,
stipulations of how we got to run that
those will,
by code.
Yes, there's minimum slopes you have to run your pipe at. If it's internal plumbing, it's one slope. If it's external 4-inch pipe, it's a different slope. But what would happen then is we typically stub them at about 5 foot depth. Unless we know it's a special condition, we can make it deeper. But usually it's around 5 foot depth, which usually is about deep enough to get most of the people connected. Okay. Without making sure, because we want to make sure you can connect to it by gravity.
Okay, that helps me a little.
So I'm Dusty Tippecanoe. I've got a couple of houses in Colburn. You're talking about put your stub at 5 foot at the property line. Plumbing's 1/4 inch a foot. if you don't have to go that far, why would you want to dig 5 foot down the ground? Your frost is at 3642. Why couldn't you stub yours up? Why couldn't you find the stub out of the house and determine where you need to be so the homeowner's not having to dig a 5 foot trench?
No, that's
You get past 4 foot, you're supposed to have a trench pump.
what we do when we stub out the lateral. We also bring up a vertical pipe, a clean out that'll come at the grade. So you would have a point to tie into that anywhere in between that 5 foot below grade up to a shallower depth.
Okay, well, you were just talking about coming up to 5 foot. You didn't say.
You're right. I'm sorry for not making that clear.
All right, thank you.
Right, I'm Jeff Walters from Buck Creek. A little clarification on the sub pump. The sub pump actually runs out right now to a drainage ditch. Would that drainage ditch be interfered with there in Buck Creek that runs down through the main street?
No, our intent is any existing storm drains, drain tiles won't be disturbed.
Okay, so we'll still be able to pump our sub pump into that.
Yeah, we're not.
Water
We're going to work around anything that's out there as far as existing drainage.
All right, thank you.
I'm not getting up again, but I have a question.
Come up to the microphone and have that.
I'll take it to you. I'll hand deliver it.
Is any of this going to raise our taxes any? That was from back behind me. I heard that.
Get raised anyway.
So is it going to raise our taxes any?
Do you consider a fee for service? Do you consider a fee for service, and I mean the monthly fee, to be taxes? I think we have worked really hard, and I got to give a lot of credit to Tracy and to the steering committee members who you've met earlier. These folks have been working hard to get you a monthly rate that is seriously low. I mean, if our objective is to have the lowest monthly rate in Indiana, and I think we might have a chance at doing it. If it's not the absolute lowest, it's going to be very close. So is this going to raise your taxes in any other way? Not that I see. But the Washington Township is planning to raise your taxes, and you might ask why.
We're going to hold on to the microphone for 30 seconds just in case you got something else. And now you're all right.
I'm Bob Shepard from Buck Creek. Just one easy question here. Last meeting we talked about, or you talked about, having a field for these lagoons, for this lagoon. Have you purchased that, or have we gotten that yet, acquired that?
We have a we have a draft. We've extended a draft purchase offer to the owner of the property.
Okay, but nothing's finalized.
Nothing is finalized yet. Yeah, for those of you who are departing, keep in mind that that is a big drop right there, and you can't. There is a ramp to the other side, not easy to see. Just be careful. Are there any other questions for the from the audience at the mic? And if not, feel free. Again, most of us will be here for a little bit if you've got other questions that come up. I don't see anyone with their hand raised or anybody moving to the microphone. I want to close by thanking the steering committee, Steve and Carl, for making a long drive tonight here to Buck Creek, and to our folks who again been out here since 3:30 today, setting the stream up and everything. Really appreciate everyone that helped pull this together, and I really appreciate you folks being here. We'll get busy on some of these great questions, and hopefully we've got email addresses and everything over there so that we can get those back to you as quickly as possible. I would encourage you to go to the Tippecanoe County Government website. There are a couple of things there of note. One, a page specific to this project that has pictures of the maps, although I don't believe they're, apparently you can't make them much larger than they are right now, so we'll work on that. And you also have the ability to sign up to get notifications from county government. If you're a person who's not into emails, but you like things buzzing your phone when you need information, it's a quick way to get notified of any of the meetings that we have or going on. And we plan on doing updates for this project and keeping people informed through that platform. So you'll continue to see folks out doing work, maybe knocking on your doors, asking questions or things like that as things move along. We're not, this project is not over. It's just beginning. And again, this is part of the process to request IDEM to grant a petition authorizing the creation of the regional sewer district. That's foundational. That's where it starts. So.
You said go to the website?
Yes.
What is the website?
www.tippecanoe.in.gov. And then there's a trying to remember, there's a check under services, and I believe the URL maybe /BC Wastewater. Okay. We'll get that out to, we'll get that, for everybody who's signed in, we'll get that out to you so you've got access to it. It is on the main page? Okay. Thank you all again.